us make sense of this ruling, I'm joined by Casac's Executive Director, Lawson Naidoo. Lawson, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. This ruling could be a game changer for the face of politics in South Africa. What did you make of this outcome?
Well, it certainly is a far-reaching judgment that certainly, as you say, is going to change the very nature of the electoral system insofar as it concerns national elections and provincial elections, and that independent candidates will now have to be accommodated within the electoral framework for those the two legislative bodies. So it is a significant change, but the detail of that change has been left up to Parliament to determine within a period of 24 months.
Now, within that period that Parliament has been given to just make sense of this, what are some of the processes that will need to be taken into account as this process begins?
Well, Parliament will have to, establish a process to deal with this judgment and to deal with the amendments of the Electoral Act. To bring it into conformity with this judgment, there would have to be public consultations, public hearings to get the views of ordinary South Africans about the kind of system, electoral system that we need to have. I think one must caution that the judgment does not mean that we're going to simply have a constituency-based electoral system, because I think it's important to note that the Constitution still says that an electoral system must result in general in proportional representation. And I think that fact was included in the Constitution because in a departure from apartheid it was felt that it was very important to have an inclusive system of representation in legislatures. So Parliament is going to have to juggle these factors of permitting the right of individual candidates to stand, but still maintaining a proportional representation system overall.
Just give us a deeper understanding, Lawson, of the Electoral Act being unconstitutional. Just how deep does it go in terms of the broader understanding of what was really wrong with it to begin with?
Well, the only part of the Electoral Act that has been declared to be unconstitutional is the provision that does not cater for individual candidates to stand for election to national and provincial legislatures. The rest of the Act is unchanged as a result of today's judgment. So the responsibility now in Parliament is to make provision for individual candidates, independent candidates, if you like, to stand for election in those bodies. Up until now, one had to be a member of a political party to be able to contest those elections. So it's a dilution, or potentially a dilution of the power of political parties. But it's not clear, given the strength of political parties in South Africa, whether this will ultimately have any significant impact on the political landscape in the country.
And as the Justice read out the judgment, one of the points that he made here was that the Minister must pay the applicant's costs. In that regard, just give us more detail and clarity of why the judge felt that this needed to be concluded in this way.
Well, it's a normal course of cost order that the costs follow the result. The applicants, or the appellants in this case, were successful, and therefore the losing party is generally deemed to bear the costs of the case. And so the cost ruling was nothing out of the ordinary.
And the New Nation movement, how much do we know about them?
Well, very little. I mean, it's a small organization that came together and launched this application in firstly in the Western Cape High Court, which they lost, and it was that judgment that was effectively overturned today. But this is a judgment that has, as I said, far-reaching implications beyond the New Nation movement, and will have an impact on our political landscape in terms of the nature of the political system or the electoral system that we ultimately agree upon as a result of this judgment. But as I'm saying, I think a couple of words of caution is that Given the strength of political parties, it won't necessarily change electoral outcomes. And secondly, it's not a panacea for extracting greater accountability from our elected representatives. And I think whilst the parliamentary process on determining how to incorporate this judgment into the Electoral Act, we will have to prioritise the issue of accountability and ensure that whatever system that we choose is one that is going to enhance accountability.
Thank you so much for that reaction coming out of Casac's Lawson Naidoo in reaction to the